Cool. Okay, so here we go. So thank you guys so much for showing up. I'm so it, I know Tiffany's really like stressed out. It was, like I learned a lot about like YouTube Live that I will never use it. But I'm again yeah. So this is a presentation Android and iOS accessibility testing. Um, my name is Crystal Preston-Watson. I'm a quality engineer at Spruce Labs in Denver. Spruce is the creator of Spruce Bright, which is a guest experience platform kind of built to enhance human-to-human connections in retail and other commerce brick and mortar places. You can see my Twitter handle, Epic Engineer. Please feel free to, follow me, see me probably post a lot about cats and also Popeye's chicken sandwiches but a lot of accessibility content. So I only do a little bit of the, kind of random content on there. And if you want to get the slides, here is like the GitHub. I'm going to also put this on my Twitter. I'm going to post this on Twitter after this. So you can go and get slides and also links to resources that I talk about during the presentation. Please wait because I realize my slides are slightly out of date by like there's like 1 or 2 missing. So I would wait for like an hour like after this so I can get those 2 slides added. And I'm going to talk about agenda, and I kind of brushed over who I am. I kind of gave you my job and where I live and like where I work. But I have been in accessibility for about 2 years. I really kind of started like getting into accessibility when I was freelancing for Aetna back in 2017. I was I was pulled in to do some, other QA, and then I happened to have the opportunity to come on board and do accessibility testing for them. So that was really awesome, and I got to do that for almost a year, and then I left I actually ended up doing a galvanize. Stay at Galvanize. I didn't graduate. I didn't graduate because I then ended up coming on board at Aetna full time on their digital accessibility team at Aetna Digital here in Denver. So that's kind of been my kind of interest and like experience with accessibility. I'm also someone who has a disability myself. I have ocular toxoplasmosis. In my right eye, I was born with it, so I can't really, I have no peripheral or central vision in my right eye. I can tell maybe shapes and colors, but that's about it. And then I also have keratoconus, which is the kind of coning of the corneas. So I have to wear a special contact in my left eye because I don't really wear it in my right eye because it wouldn't help me anyway. So accessibility is something I'm passionate about, not just because I'm in tech and I care about the users and people using technology, but it's something that is personal also. And enough about me. Here's our agenda. It's going to do accessibility 101. Kind of give you a background. I feel this is more of a basic talk. I'm not going to get into like a bunch of coding examples because one, I am coming from a tester background. I'm not someone who's done a lot of development. So I don't want to kind of sit here and watch you see me on the struggle bus when it comes to trying to code. Especially, I'm someone like I can code, but I do not need the added stress of having, a bunch of people watching me. So I just wanted to kind of let you know, if you're expecting like hard code crush it, like that's just not what that's going to be today. This is a good kind of introduction to accessibility testing when it comes to mobile iOS, Android devices. So I'm going to go over iOS, features, tools, things to note, and Android, again, also features, tools, and things to notes, best practices. And I was going to do a live demo. That is not going to be possible, but I do have backup recordings that I made. So that I hope that works out for you guys. Okay, so accessibility 101. Let's just get to it. So you might have seen the uh, hashtag A11Y on Twitter and other social media. So if you always wonder what that meant, because especially kind of connecting with accessibility content, it's just accessibility abbreviated. So it's in the A, accessibility, Y, it's in Y, and then the 11 there's 11 letters between the A and the Y. So if you see that kind of coming up, that is what that is. It's called, I guess it's called a numeronym. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but yeah, so it's a numeronym, or it's an abbreviation. Let's go with that. So pretty much, what is digital accessibility? What is accessibility? It's websites, applications, and technologies that are designed and developed so that people, regardless of their situation, circumstances, or ability, can use them. It's one of these things of, it's simple, but people tend to make this hard, mainly because of, I think this is pretty simple. It's like you're making things that so everyone can use. But I think there's that kind of mindset that to actually do this, it's hard. And it's not, if you are intentional in what you're trying to build. If you are building for a very niche consumer, which is like ideal consumer, then yeah, this is going to be something that is not really not really easy, but that's true of anything. So just some numbers about accessibility and people with disability. So about 1 billion people, 1 billion of the world's population live with some form of disability, and about 56 million live in the United States, and about 28 million use the internet on a daily basis. And that's on a daily basis. There's, when you kind of factor in more kind of casual use, and also that number might seem low, but a lot, you have to understand, a lot of that is because the access to, a lot of people want to get on to use apps and use websites, but their access is blocked. You might, if you're kind of interested in accessibility, you might have heard of the Domino's case that's gonna, it's supposed to go up towards the Supreme Court. I don't know if it's later this year or next year, whenever the court's in session. And it's because Domino's got sued by a blind user who could not order pizza from their website. And so Domino's is now, they were ruled against in a lower court. Now they're asking the Supreme Court to they say that that the law doesn't cover, the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, doesn't cover web accessibility. There's a whole bunch of legal kind of things around that, but this is why, but this is something that people with disabilities completely do face, and why if this numbers is pretty low. Hopefully, I don't know if I'm seeing stuff like, hopefully there might be questions. I can't really I don't so if there's questions, Tiffany? I don't know if I need to do that, but so I just want to going on. Like, I'm sure if there's any questions, you'll jump in and like say I need to answer those. So let's talk about these what you're seeing on the screen right now, disabilities that affect access. This is kind of the how it's usually broken down. There are, disabilities, or there are visual disabilities that with dealing with motor skill issues, and physical disabilities, cognitive, dealing with learning disabilities and other disorders, impairments, and then auditory. So, and pretty much disabilities, there's a legal kind of definition. There's also more kind of, I guess, layman terms, but really it's just disabilities. The definition is pretty much impairments that kind of substantially limit one or more major life activity. And a lot of people think of disabilities as permanent, but if you see right here, this is a link, that a resource that I have included from Microsoft Inclusion Design. It shows that disabilities can be permanent, temporary, or situational. This chart right here, it shows, like, just with touch, a permanent disability dealing with a physical disability would be someone who has use of only one arm. Temporary would be someone who has broken their arm and has to use a sling for a couple of weeks. And situational would be a parent who's carrying a child, and in that situation can't maybe physically interact with something. And it goes through the various other kind of senses and and disabilities that you would find permanent, temporary, and situational. So hopefully I'm not going too fast for you guys. I want to be mindful of your time. I know I could talk about this all night, but I know we all have families, or just things to get back to, watching Leverage now. So, but accessibility also, it has benefits for those without disabilities. As I talked about, like, if you're someone who has, you have, you're a parent and you have a kid in your hand, well, you may need to answer a phone. And so that, accessibility in applications, you can answer a phone call or use an app with just one hand. If you're in a coffee shop and you need to, we've all kind of been there where you've heard someone like using YouTube in a coffee shop blasting away. Well, if you are not, if you don't want to do that, using the closed caption for videos allows you to view a video, but not have to, like, use the sound. A person who's inebriated, like, say someone wants to use Uber or Lyft, that allows them to, they could use Siri to interact, to call, say, to interact with Uber or Lyft. And the last one is kind of me. Since I have hard contacts, I take them out because I can only wear them for so long. And then once I take my hard contact out, my vision is reduced greatly. So I tend to need applications that are accessible for me. I do sometimes use a screen reader, but a lot of times I'll zoom, or kind of zoom in on things, or put the phone really close to my face. And but also just, someone who doesn't maybe have visual disabilities like mine, just, like the sun glare. And if you've ever used your phone in the sun and you can't really see it, that's a huge issue. So when it comes to guidelines with accessibility, there's kind of kind of um, one of the ones that's most recognized is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, and it's a series of internationally recognized guidelines for improving web accessibility created by the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C. It is These are also the guidelines that many, if a company and organizations are legally required to have accessibility, these are the guidelines in the United States that they would follow, that is recognized. That And there's also some other countries. I think in the UK, but don't quote me on that. I would have to look at, because I'm not completely sure if that's legally, like if they follow. But if you want to know for sure, just let me know, and I will look that up for you. So WCAG operates on four principles, and it's and, it's a this was something that W3C kind of created as a useful guidance for making websites and applications accessible. And that is that things are perceivable, that users must be able to perceive the information being presented. Operable, users must be able to operate the interface. Understandable, users must be able to understand the information as well as the operation of the user interface. And robust, users must be able to access the content as technologies advance. And this is robust is something that really kind of keys in on mobile accessibility, because when WCAG was first kind of published, which was 2008, there was mobile apps and mobile and you know and mobile devices were around, of course, but thinking of like iPhones and Android devices in 2008 versus 2019 is vastly different. And also the apps that ran on them in 2008 versus now. If you are There's three levels of conformance that if you're that applications, especially if you're legally kind of required to do, that you can follow. Kind of the best way to go is that if you're trying to be in compliant to WCAG guidelines, that you aim for AA, and AA is the level that you must meet if you're legally required to be, to follow accessibility, like through the ADA, Section 508, for kind of government organizations and like financial institutions, and Section 504 for higher education and other other educational organizations. So level AA is what you want to get with. You definitely want to aim for. Level A is, I think, I think all sites and all applications should have, if no matter what, but I think everyone should aim for AA. And for AAA, it's the highest kind of level of web accessibility. And I would say people think, well, that's what you should aim for, because it's the highest level. But it's because because the highest level AAA may not be able to be applied to all websites. So you don't so for the most part, if your application meets AA conformance, then you most people, disabled users, can use your application or website. WCAG kind of goes over mobile. There's last year was the update to WCAG. Before it was WCAG 2.0. There was some issues with that. Is that with 2.0, there was you had to pretty much map it was kind of geared towards desktop websites, and then that you had to pretty much map those criteria to mobile applications. So WCAG 2.0 kind of introduced some new criteria that are specifically for mobile. These are the 8 that were introduced with 2.1. It's several things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but in the resources, I have links, good links that kind of break this down. So but just kind of going over like the first one, orientation is dealing with if you have a app that, it's pretty much saying that you can't restrict the app's use with one orientation. So you can't say, well, if you're a user, you must use this in landscape and not portrait mode, unless there is some required reason for your application to do that, and that would say maybe for like a mobile game. But for the most part, if you have an application, you shouldn't restrict it to just one particular orientation. And then for pointer gestures, it's just saying that that you're, if you use multi-point or path based gestures, that it can also be used, that you also have um, buttons to to mimic, not mimic, sorry. So it's like functionality that, let me just start over again. So it's functionality that uses multi-point or path-based gestures for operation, can be operated with a single pointer without a path-based gesture. So it's just saying that if you're using gestures, there is an alternate way to operate that app that doesn't require your actual physical touch for those with disabilities that may limit their mobility. And these are, again, I have links to resources that break down all these particular success criteria along with the rest of WCAG. So we're going to go over some Android like features and tools. So if you have an Android phone, you may not, you may be or maybe not be familiar with these features. They're in the settings menu under the accessibility. So if you go into the settings menu, scroll down, there is a accessibility menu that you can click through. So TalkBack is a gesture-based screen reader that that users can use. Magnifier is pretty much allows the user to zoom or magnify their screen. High contrast, it makes text easier to read on a device, and so this kind of feature allows the text colors to be either black or white depending on the original text color, and that's just for people with low vision, so they can see because a lot of times with designs, the text is the contrast is not enough for someone with low vision, and then this will help them be able to see the content better. Larger text, again, it allows someone with lower vision to enlarge text so they may be able to view it. And then switch access allows a user to interact with the Android device using one or more switches instead of a touch screen. And this is, again, for people who have impairments that prevent them from interacting with the device through touch. So Android tools. you're going to get some X for Android, and X is a automated accessibility library that allows you to automation to kind of check for different accessibility issues on your application, and you can, it's through DQ, and you can go ahead and download it onto, and you'll and it's a good tool. I haven't used it much. I'm going to be honest. I'm mostly, when I've done accessibility, I'm mostly geared towards manual. But it's a really good tool, and I'll go into kind of automation versus manual testing a little bit later. But and kind of where you can't use just one or the you, you can't just use automation for accessibility, and I'll go a little bit into that. Um, Going on the accessibility scanner, and I have a video of me kind of using it, and I'll show a little bit later how this works. So it scans the application and provides suggestion on how you can improve the accessibility on your app. It kind of goes through content labels, it talks about touch size, clickable items, text and image contrast. So it's a good tool to kind of get a kind of quick glimpse at issues of your application. And the Android Accessibility Test Kit is just a guide that has really good resources, kind of together that of different tools and resources for Android developers and testers of kind of accessibility, just tools and things that are geared exclusively for Android. Okay, so going into iOS. So features, and so pretty much it's, again, and so this is not just it when it comes to these features. There are more features. I just kind of chose for both Android and iOS the ones that I think people tend to interact most with when they're doing testing. There are more features, especially when it comes to iOS, that iOS and Apple has when it comes to accessibility, but these are the type that you're going to use most. And when it comes to this, a lot of the things they have the same they have the same they they have the same goal, but they do them in different ways. So Zoom, the way Zoom kind of acts on iOS, which so in Zoom on iOS, it allows you to, you'll double tap or pinch to like look closer at like photos or web pages. You can, and then magnifier again, you can, like, that'll allow you to zoom in on like on objects nearby for someone with low vision. Again, invert colors, larger text, and switch control. So it's just that the same idea done in different ways because they're two different platforms, so they're not going to be same. And also, just to say, iOS, when it comes to accessibility, especially when it comes to features and the ease of integrating of really building a iOS app for accessibility, you're going to have a easier, I don't want to say easier, but I think it's there's a lot more resources if you're an iOS developer and an iOS tester versus Android. And that is kind of reflected for a lot of people with disabilities, tend to prefer using iOS and Mac devices because of the really kind of the blown away with the type of features and the ease of use of the devices versus Android, or say if you're on desktop Windows. Tools, again, these are not all the tools. These are just these are things that I kind of know of, and I don't. So again, I have resources. I encourage you all to, again, go out and look for things. Apps for iOS, this is pending. So it's, but it, in the same thing, it allows you to kind of, it's a library for iOS devices, done by DQ to do automated accessibility testing. And then you have the accessibility inspector through Xcode, and that and that shows you kind of all the properties and values and actions that can occur from like elements on the screen. And then it also positions of objects that are currently on your screen in your application. So best practices, I'm gonna go, hopefully, again, I'm gonna go a little bit into this. I don't, I'm not gonna go into a deep dive. We're not gonna, like, tonight, we're not going to test an application because I don't want to be like, I don't want to kind of do this, excuse my French, half-ass. And so I'm just gonna kind of give you like a good kind of thoughts that I have from my, like, what I've done during testing, and kind of things that I would like to have known, and things that tricks that I tend to use. So and then others also, which is because things tend to use are things that I've learned from other people and other resources. One thing that I've kind of brought up, automation is 100% automated accessibility test coverage is not possible. You're going to have manual testing, because depending on the tool, like automated tools, you can get 25 to 50% there. There are a lot of like clients and companies who really want to do automated tests, just because if just kind of in general, when it comes to QA and testing, there are a lot of places that do not want to do manual testing, and they feel that automated testing can get them there. And even if you're not testing for accessibility, that's not true. You can't, you can't get 100% test coverage through automation. So I just wanted to let you know, like, these things, like if you get automated tools, that's fine. They're going to help you, and they can cut down on some of the more basic things, but you're going to have to do manual testing. And kind of one of the reasons why is because, yeah, it can only get you so far. This is an article, and I've linked to it, where it's a really good one, where this the author built an site, and this site was completely like inaccessible, especially to screen readers and like going through keyboard. But when he ran the Lighthouse audit in Chrome, it got 100%, and and it was completely inaccessible. So I definitely suggest reading this article. It's really good. Also follow him on Twitter. It's his Twitter. It's like he's a really good just resource for accessibility content. Talkback and voiceover are going to be your biggest tools. They're features, but they're also your tools. That is something I know that I use most often. I, of course, do Zoom and color contrast, but when I'm doing my testing, I use talkback and voiceover a lot of the time in my testing. So that means you need to kind of get comfortable using it and learning how to use it. Voiceover, when you first turn on voiceover, you like, at least on you can, okay, that's on browser, but I even suggest, even though it's not on your phone, I suggest if you have a MacBook, turn on voiceover for your laptop and go through the tutorial that it does. It's not quite the same, but it gets you kind of like, it kind of gets you a good introduction into a screen reader. This through the, I'm going to say it wrong, the Pacquiello group, is a guide where they go through like gestures and how to for talkback and voiceover, because since it's a gesture based screen reader, kind of it tells you like if you need to do how to navigate through an application for both platforms. It's a really good guide. I refer to it a lot of times. It is a bit old. This was last updated in 2017, but for most part, most of the information is still correct. But I would, caveat that you might want to, if you have any questions about things in there, you might want to kind of look up to see some things updated. As you're going through using your screen reader, don't I think there's this thing. So I came upon someone and they were like, well, to truly get the experience, to test correctly a screen reader, I need to put on a blindfold, and I need to close my eyes. And don't do that. I think that, as my father said, and a lot of older, like, the road to hell's paved with good intentions. If you are testing something and you are someone who cannot, like, you have never used a screen reader before, and you are someone who has, vision, and you're trying to test, this is not going to help you in any way. I don't like, I, even though I do use a screen reader also in my personal life, when I'm testing, I don't do that. Like, I will, I, that's just something it's like, it's just don't do it. I understand kind of where you might want to do it. I just wanted to say that that's just something that came up where when someone just said that they blindfold themselves, and I mean, yeah. I'm just gonna go on. So um here's a good kind of checklist to kind of like, if you're going to do some testing of your application. This is, again, this is not this is kind of platform agnostic in this, like, so you can do this on both iOS and Android. Here's a good kind of checklist to kind of go through as you're going through your application. And that's like, navigate the page by semantic elements. Like, this is like using voiceover, the word to keyboard navigation, or explore by touch to select elements and hear the accessibility properties. Tab, swipe, or arrow key through all elements. You make sure that you can access all elements in a logical way. Set focus to each element to verify proper accessible name, role value, and state is spoken by the screen reader. Again, activate. So this is this is a good checklist to kind of go. There's a more detailed checklist that in my resources I link to, and this is something that I tend to, when I'm testing, so doing mobile tests, accessibility testing, I tend to refer to make sure I'm kind of hitting all the necessary items, to make sure I'm finding some of the the biggest and most important trouble spot areas. So we're kind of towards the end. I am going to quickly show you, hopefully this actually works. I couldn't do a live demo. I realized that I was going to do a thing, show you how to do the accessibility scanner. Yeah, it's going to cut off because it's because this recording app could not record the accessibility scanner. And so I'm going to show you what it looks like. So you saw at least how to get there. And this is what it looks like. So it'll take a snapshot of the screen of your application screen. I'm using Instagram right here, and it goes through and highlights issues that you and gives suggestions of things that you might want to to that might be issues and bugs and accessibility bugs that you might want to take care of. So like with this, it's saying that with this search field, that the text contact the text contrast of, say, the auto generated, like auto suggestion is not good. It's too low. The touch target is not big. It may not be big enough, and that you may want to make it larger. And it also where it says to suggestion, it gives elements of where you might find that. And then the next one, I'm gonna play this really. You may not. I'm gonna pause this. Like, this is me using TalkBack. I'm not gonna play the whole thing because it might be the audio's not great. So hopefully you can see it. I'm just gonna play the first 30 seconds of me going through Instagram using a screen reader. So this is just a little. So it's like it's about 3 minutes of me going through and using TalkBack. This is kind of, yeah, it's kind of, I chose Instagram because personally I use I tried to use TalkBack within my personal Instagram account the other day, and I realized it was at night, and there was a lot of issues with with me accessing it. And like, because the thing is that I could see the image is not great. And one of the things is the Instagram does auto alt text, and alt text is something that it's very important to make sure that you have, so screen readers can announce what that image is in that image. Well, Instagram does auto alt text if you don't do custom alt text, but it just says, like, so with the foot, like if the picture that we saw right before I stopped it, it'll just say image might have food in it. And that's really not good. You don't want to say give a whole dissertation in your alt text, but saying this image might have, like, saying food is not descriptive enough. Like, so if it's a picture of a cake, you don't have to, you can say image of a chocolate, like just say it chocolate cake. Like, I try to be a little bit more wordy because that's just how I am. So when I'm pretty kind of, when I do alt text, I try to give good descriptions, but enough to give context is what you want to do. Okay, I'm going to end now. It's 43 minutes. Uh, this is it. I will, you can find me at these different, like, links. I'll just leave this up on screen for a while. Yeah, that's that's it. I know there's a lot of questions, and yeah. Oh, um, okay. I I'm gonna kind of. I'm actually gonna. I'm gonna stop sharing, and then. But if you, so I can get to the questions. uh, yeah. Okay. Um. Okay. Okay. I know. I muted people, so I didn't see you guys were. So I muted. So I'm gonna try to just go from the very top. So Jason, you seem like you had the first question. So, how does QE go about testing the build out when the application for uh, um, within the application for features specific to end users with disabilities? So, what do you mean build, like? I guess build out. Oh man, I guess uh if you could um so what do you mean? But I guess my thing is like, what do you, if you're still here, Jason, if you can type in what you mean, if you could just clarify build out, just okay. Okay. So through QA testing. Okay. Um, when it comes to, so I'll just what I'm just like, so when it comes to accessible, like um, during QA, usually what you want to like, you'll get a kind of like a dev, like a QA build of the application. Say like so, like with iOS through like um, you know, through iOS, like on like test flight. And then you kind of just, through there, run it through um, like, like you would use an app. So using voiceover, the different accessibility features. Now, when it comes to through different, when it comes to like different, like if you're going to do automation testing, that's a little bit and for me, I don't have a huge glimpse into that because I haven't done much automated testing where like through kind of um, like CI and stuff like that. So using Axe, I do have like using automated tools, say like on like desktop browser, like on desktop browsers. So when it comes to mobile accessibility, it's all pretty much manual, and it's usually getting that through test flight. If it's when it's like with Android, you the thing is that there's when it comes to like you need an actual kind of like dev build or QA build of an application. You can't really do emulators or anything like that. Like um, if you're actually testing like different zooms and stuff like that, like automation like can show you like you don't have all tags or the labels are incorrect or things like that. But if you are going to, if you want to test the screen, what the screen reader says, you need to actually do that on the device. And you really can't do that through an emulator. I know in Xcode, like you can't emulate voiceover through that. If you're going to use voice tested voiceover, you have to do it on the actual device. Hopefully, um, if you if you need more clarification, let me know. I'm going to go on. Do you use readability formulas as part of your manual usability assessment, especially in healthcare or other fields where a lot of jargon is used or there are polysyllabic words used? And so to redo that, I have not used that. I have, for the most part, I haven't really. I know that you can. I haven't come up with a lot of issues with um, with the screeners having too much trouble with that. I think where that ends up becoming probably even a bigger issue is when you're doing kind of foreign language, and there are so I'm not as familiar with kind of accessibility testing when it comes to like say if you are having a a application that is in say Spanish or French. There are probably techniques that I'm not familiar on the top of my head. That's something I would have to look into more. But if you feel free to kind of reach out to me, because I'm going to look into that more, and I will give you a more detailed answer. Here's the next question. Um, on a desktop, when I do manual accessibility testing, I turn off the monitor. How would you do that on iOS, Android? Do those apps mention? Yeah, there are, like, you can do that. Um, so the short answer is yes, you can turn off your screen. You'll have to just look that up in the documentation on how to do that. Next question. I only did accessibility testing with web before. Are these tools mostly doing smoke tests, which means focuses much more on color and contrast? So these tools are kind of, they do like with automation, they do tend to lean way more heavily on color and contrast, alt tags, especially more things that are kind of in code that you can test for. When it comes to actual like zoom and magnification, testing with different accessibility devices that you would plug in, say like you have a braille keyboard, you're not going to, those tools are not going to help you. And that's why manual testing it's not only very important, you're going to have to do it. So like I said before, automation is only like automation tools are only going to get you quarter or half or halfway with finding accessibility issues in your applications. Okay, I think um, if there's not any more questions, I can answer more questions. I know that we got started late. I know that I'm kind of I can I just want to stress, like, I'm not an expert. I'm just someone that's kind of, this is important to me. I feel that I feel it's a human, accessibility is a human right. People should be able, the internet is vital, and it's something that you need to, it's internet, like it's how people make a living, and and that means people should be able to access things, and that's and that also means on a desktop or on a mobile device, and say your phone or your Apple Watch or any future devices that come along. I really want to just say, please go ahead, like, feel like I will post the, like, go to my GitHub and you can do the README, and I have links all there now. I'll update the slides. Please just feel free to explore. Also ask me questions. Yeah. So this is it. I thank you so much for everyone that that still attended. And Tiffany was great. I had such a fun time trying to figure out YouTube Live. I know you were stressed out. I just didn't say it was like the highlight of my day. And yeah, so thank you so much.